Good day everyone, I am Adriana Fernandez and welcome to this video about Chavez versus Gonzales case, which deals with the application of RA 4200, also known as the Anti-Wiretapping Act. In this case, several justices of the Supreme Court provided their opinions reflecting a range of perspectives, including our Chief Justice Renato Espuno, who delivered the main decision. This was followed by several associate justices, including Adolfo S. Asguna, Antonio T. Carpio, Minita V. Chico Nazario, Antonio Eduardo V. Nachura, Angelina Sandoval Gutierrez, Dante Otinga, and lastly, Presbitero J. Velasco Jr. So these varied opinions highlight the complexity of the legal issues and the different judicial philosophies. So now let me introduce the contents that I will be tackling in this video. So I will be tackling this what is the case all about, what are the facts of the case, what are the issues on the case, what is the ruling of the Supreme Court, and last, what are my takeaways or learnings from this case. So let's dive in these points in detail. So first, what is the case all about? So the Chavez v. Gonzales case is centered around the release of wiretap conversation known as the Garci Tapes, which allegedly involved former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and a COMELEC official discussing election fraud during the 2004 national elections. So this controversy led to warnings from the DOJ Secretary Raul Gonzales and the National Telecommunications Commission, or the NTC, against airing the tapes, that citing potential violation of RA 4200 or the Anti-Wiretapping Act. So because of that, Francisco Chavez filed a petition challenging these warnings as unconstitutional because arguing that they infringe on the freedoms of expression of the press and the public's right to information on matters of public concern. So, what is the petition itself? So, in this case, Francisco Chavez filed a petition for certiorari and prohibition. So, he challenged the constitutionality of the warnings issued by DOJ Secretary Raul Gonzales and the National Telecommunications Commission. So, Chavez argued that these warnings were a form of prior restraint or on freedom of speech and the press, which violated the Constitution. So now I will be discussing the facts inside this case. So let's look at the key events in early June 2005 that led to Chavez versus Gonzales case. So first, on June 5 or June 5 to 6, Press Secretary Ignacio Bunier revealed two versions of a wiretap conversation. So, suggesting that opposition was planning to destabilize the administration because one version was allegedly complete while the other was spliced to imply election manipulation by former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. So, after that, on June 7, former counsel of the post-President Joseph Estrada and Attorney Alan subsequently released an alleged authentic tape recording of the wiretap. Included in the tapes were purported conversations of the former president, the First Gentleman Jose Miguel Arroyo, the COMELEC Commissioner Garciliano, and the late Senator Barbers. So, on June 8, DOJ Secretary Raul Gonzales warned that those possessing or airing the tapes could be held liable under the Anti-Wiretapping Act, stating that possessing or broadcasting the tapes was a continuing offense. So after that, on June 9, Bunye backtracked and stated that the woman's voice in the compact disc was not the former President Arroyo's after all. So, meanwhile, other individuals went public and claiming possession of the genuine copy of the Garci Tapes. Responded Gonzales ordered that National Bureau of Investigation to investigate the media organization which aired the Garci Tapes for possible violation of Republic Act No. 4200 or the Anti-Wiretapping Law. So, in June 11, media organizations faced increased pressure and threats of license suspension or revocation for airing the tapes because on June 11, the NTC issued a press release warning radio and television stations that airing the Garci tapes is a cause for suspension, revocation, and or cancellation of the licenses or authorizations issued to them. So, after the scenario, on June 14th, NTC officers met with officers of the Broadcasters Group, kapisanan ng mga broadcasters sa Pilipinas or the KBP, to dispel fears of censorship. The NTC and the KBP issued a joint press statement expressing commitment to press freedom. So, on June 29, there were petitioner Francisco I. Chavez, as a citizen himself, filed this petition to nullify the acts and issuances and orders of the NTC and responded Gonzales. So, what are the issues on this case? So, for our prior restraint, whether the warnings issued by Gonzales and the NTC constitute prior restraint on freedom of speech and the press. Constitutionality, whether these warnings were unconstitutional and infringe on the public's right to information. Regulatory authority, whether the NTC acted beyond its authority in issuing warnings against airing the tapes. So, the main issue in this case were whether the warning issued by Gonzales and the national by the NTC constituted prior restraint on freedom of speech and the press, and whether these warnings were unconstitutional and infringe on the public's right to the information. So, furthermore, in this case, the court took the opportunity to re-examine the principles governing freedom of speech, expressing, and the press, emphasizing their fundamental role in a democratic society. So, for obstruction of free speech, the court reiterated that freedom of speech is a preferred right. It is essential for discovery of truth, the functioning of democracy, and the protection of individual autonomy. For differentiation, the limits and restraint of free speech. So, while freedom of speech is broad, it is not absolute. So, the court discussed the permissible limits and restraints on free speech, such as those necessary to protect national security, public order, public health, and morals. In focus, freedom of the press, the court highlighted the critical role of the press in disseminating information and fostering public discourse. It emphasized that any form of prior restraint on the press is presumptively unconstitutional. So, in anatomy restrictions, prior restraint, um, content neutral and content-based regulations, the court differentiated between content and neural regulations, which are generally permissible if they serve a significant governmental interest, leave open for alternative challenge for communication, and content-based regulations, which are subject to strict and are often deemed unconstitutional. And lastly, the dichotomy of free press, print versus broadcast media. The court acknowledged the differences between print and broadcast media. It noted that broadcast media are subject to greater regulation due to their pervasive presence and the scarcity of frequencies. However, it maintained the both forms of media and protected under Constitution. So, what is the ruling of the Supreme Court? The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Francisco Chavez, our petitioner, nullifying the warnings and press release by Gonzales and the NTC. The court found that these actions constituted prior restraint and were unconstitutional. The decision emphasized the preferred status of freedom of expression and the need for any restriction to pass the clear and present danger test. So, what are my takeaways or learnings in this case? So, first, this case really highlights for me how crucial it is to protect our freedom of speech and the press. It's a fundamental part of our democracy that we can take for granted. Next, it clearly shows the limit of what the government can do when it comes for regulating the media. There are boundaries that must be respected to ensure a free and open society. Also, I see this case as a strong reminder that the public has a right to access information, especially on issues that affect everyone. So, transparency is essential for accountability. And lastly, this case also demonstrates the vital role of the judiciary in safeguarding our constitutional rights and ensuring that no branch of government oversteps its authority. So for today's quote, as Associate Justice Sandoval Gutierrez stated, Heinrich Heine quote, the quote was, where they have burned books, they will end in burning human beings. To emphasize the dangers of censorship, she argued that the NTC press release warning against airing the Garci Tapes was a form of censorship that could lead to greater oppression, underscoring the need to protect freedom of expression. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and remember that protecting freedom of expression is essential for healthy society. So let's continue to value and protect our freedoms.